Well, Erik Christiansen, it's good to have you here today. Been looking forward to this. I have my own love for what you do as a cannabis photographer. Excited to get this one scheduled today. You've worked on several projects, a lot to list, but some of your most recent ones, the lore, legends, and legacy of cannabis. And then you previously had one that you worked on, which was by Rolling Stone quoted as one of the 8 best books about weed, which was Green, a field guide to marijuana. So I appreciate you being here today and sharing your love for the plant as a fellow cannabis lover. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
What got you into, well, first off, let's start here. What started your love for cannabis? Because, I mean, if you're taking pictures of it and getting up close and personal, then you got to have a love for the plant. So what started your love for the plant?
I started smoking for the first time around 19. I really credit a lot of my love for cannabis to one of my friends at college. I was just smoking like whatever was coming around. This was before dispensaries or before I had access to dispensaries. And he had a plug that had this crazy Granddaddy Purple. And it was like dark purple. I'd never seen anything like it. Everything I'd smoked up until that point was, green, standard, whatever, nothing good. This purple stuff looked so unique. It smelled so crazy. That's really the moment that kicked it off for me. And it's actually the first strain that I ever shot. I was already a hobbyist photographer at the time. And I was like, I have to shoot this, tried to shoot it, didn't have the right gear. And that's kind of what kicked off my cannabis photography hobby at that point that then, blossomed, 10 years later into my career.
Awesome. That's awesome. I still remember the first time I saw cannabis that had color. So, it's that same feeling of like, what? It's more than just green, like it was.
Yeah.
And it seems like always, the ones that have the crazy colored stuff, you're right. The smells are just always so unique, and some are nice and sweet and candy-like, and some are just so skunky and gassy. And I love them.
Yeah. And I mean, up close, they look even crazier too, but we can get into that.
So we can talk about that. You said you didn't have the right gear. So I said that I'm a fellow lover, my rudimentary techniques. Okay. So we'll take it back. This is starting in 2012, early days of Instagram. I was one of those guys that was like documenting my daily smoke and stuff. Right. And so I went on and I got a little macro lens for my iPhone, and put that on there and was, trying to do the photos and stuff, would do the twaxed out joints and everything. But I could only get so good with that lens. So what was the right tools that you needed?
Well, so I'm sure you remember using that kind of macro lens on your phone, you could only get like a sliver of focus. Like it was, just a little cluster of trichomes. Everything else was just totally out of focus. That's exactly what I ran into as well. Just had a basic kit lens, nothing fancy. Tried to shoot, this nug. I got as close as I could, as close as the lens would focus. And there was just, like 2% of the image in focus. And I just kind of started doing research, trying to, fix that, get more in focus. That's when I discovered focus stacking, which is basically shooting multiple images at different focus points and then combining them together in the computer to unlock a wider range of focus. It was early on. I was experimenting with that. Had to reinvest, get some more tools. I got a flash. I got what's called extension tubes. Basically just moves your lens away from camera's sensor that just allows it to focus closer. Got that, and that introduces even less in focus, even though you can focus closer. Just kind of kicked off me going down the rabbit hole, macro photography, and just constantly trying to improve, trying to get closer, trying to get more in focus. Invested in like computer controlled macro focus rails that basically control, you program how far you want the camera to move between each photo, and then just press go and walk away, and it'll, move forward, take a picture, move forward, take a picture. And you can program all the time between pictures just to minimize vibration and just make sure you're capturing all the detail. And then you can combine those together in the computer. I usually do between 1 and 400 pictures that go into the final stacked photo.
With 400 individual pictures to make one photo.
Yes, that's correct. Oh, wow. The closer you get, the more photos are required. Like I have some microscope lenses that I can attach to my camera. My 20X, I do 2 microns between pictures. So it's you get about 6 trichomes in the frame with that, and it takes sometimes 700 to 1,200 pictures to get a final stacked photo.
But that's how you get that insane detail that you're speaking about. And I mean, you're able to see in the book, the lore, legends, and legacy of cannabis, you're able to see some of those detailed pictures.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. You know, some people just think of cannabis as something that you grow that gets, you know, cut down, and then they buy it in a bag or a jar and grind it up and put it in their bowl or whatever. And they don't see the beauty of it. They don't see the hard work. I get to share that love in it because I've worked from the ground up. I've worked on a farm before. I'm not the green thumb. I'm not no master grower by any means, but I've helped, and I've seen it from seed, clone, all the way through. I've helped harvest, helped with the curing, the trimming, the processing. I've seen every process of it and part of it. And it makes you have a deeper passion and love for it. And then also I've seen, you know, just the healing that comes from it. Personally, I've experienced that. I've also seen it and heard the testimonies of countless individuals. And so even then, my passion's even more. So when I think of cannabis, I don't think of it the same way that other people do. And I'm sure you, as being a photographer, you don't think of cannabis the way other people do. So what's your creative process when you're going through and you're setting up your model and you're thinking about your shoot that you're about to do and how you want to display this strain and how you want to, you know, help people identify with the uniqueness and just share its beauty? What's your creative process for that?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you touched on seeing the plant from clone, veg, flower to harvest. The first 2 books that I worked on with Dan, Green, A Field Guide to Marijuana, and Green, A Pocket Guide to Pot, those were all dry nugs. That was my experience early on. I never got to see the plant for years into my photographic career because, you know, it was early on. People were still, you know, underground with their grows. They were super reluctant to have, you know, a random person come in and see the grow. So, you know,
let's let some take pictures of it. Let me come
bring a
photograph your illegal grow, bro.
Exactly. So it was just a complete unknown for me. I did get my medical card and I was going to dispensaries, but I was just seeing, you know, 20 different strains on a shelf that all looked different, but I had no tie to where that came from, how that ended up there. So for my first, you know, 5-6 years in the industry, I was just shooting dry nug. It wasn't until I saw my first plant that it, like, everything really clicked for me, and I saw how it ended up in this dry nug and the care that needs to go into it to end up with a final good product. So I think the live plants just have so much more beauty. They're just, you know, rich and just like living, you know, it's totally different from a dry nug. A dry nug loses a little bit of the color, and it has to go through the trimming process, and it might be put in a jar and bounced around in a car to get to the dispensary. And so there's a lot lost. So with Higher, we really wanted to show off the live plant. And so that's exactly what we did. There's 100 different strains featured, 50 old school strains and 50 modern strains. So, you know, it's a really interesting journey through the cannabis landscape. And, you know, it's tough to stay on top of the modern strains because there's new ones coming out every day. New breeders pop. Wow. So we did our best to kind of showcase, you know, a good smattering of the modern strains, and then of the old school strains that we could track down. You know, it's really tough to make the shoots happen when you got to be at the grow in like a 3 to 5 day window right before harvest to capture it at peak ripeness. Sometimes the color doesn't come in until the very end. So just connecting with growers and trying to be in the right place at the right time to capture the plant was a super fun challenge. But I think we pulled it off pretty well.
I bet that was a unique journey on its own, just getting to collaborate with all these different growers, seeing all the different methods and different spaces and different personalities.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody grows differently.
They do. What are some of the things that in your journey, and that's what I was going to get to, in your journey of, documenting and photographing cannabis, specifically with hire, when you were able to go around and see these different grows and stuff, what's just some of the things that you learned about cannabis and, about maybe some of the different ways, and you saw, if you saw stuff grown on the East Coast versus the West Coast, and maybe the way the plants came out, was there anything there?
We did. I'm mainly focused on the West Coast. Okay. I did get to go to Michigan to a couple farms and see how they grew it out there. That was really interesting because it was more like large scale agriculture. Like we saw, I think it was like 30,000 plants at one farm. It like I did some drone shots and it was just like rows as far as the eye could see, just a gorgeous weed plant. And that was full sun, and they look just as stunning as like an indoor. I mean, there's obviously subtle differences, but there were some super dark, rich purple ones, some just shimmering greens and yellows. And it's just wandering the field and seeing all the differences and smelling all the differences is just so fun.
I love sun-grown cannabis. I've indoor sun-grown, I always tell people, like, indoor you get to control everything about it, and you do most of the time end up with a cleaner product because you don't have the outside air just polluting it with dusts and pollens and stuff. And so your trichromes are always going to be that nice crystally white because they're not collecting the dirt and everything that like you get when you get full sun-grown. But sun-grown, it has such a high resin content, and it always seems for me to produce some of the stickiest nugs that I've ever got my hands on. And like you said, some of the colors are just crazy on that, and the terpene profiles as well. And I've got to experience in my life cannabis grown, and I feel very fortunate all around the world. And so different soil compositions and stuff, and you do get to taste that uniqueness from different breeders and where it's grown and how it's grown. But I love it. Kind of switch topics, you have this plant, and yes, you're taking these amazing pictures, but I feel that there's most of the time there's always a purpose in behind something that we do, right? So besides showing us beautiful pictures and displaying the plant in all its glory, what is your message that you're trying to portray to people? What are you trying to bring to the world with showing them cannabis?
I guess I kind of just took it and ran with it. I feel really fortunate to, know all these growers, and they graciously allow me to come into their grow room at the peak ripeness, and I get to take my pick of my subject to shoot. Most people don't get to see that. So I feel like I'm in a really unique place to be able to A, experience that, and then B, capture it and share it with the world. So yeah, I would just say bringing something to people's eyes that they normally would never get a chance to see, or just a few lucky ones that get to go into a grow. Because, it's a grow, it's their bottom line. They're not going to be letting random people in that might be bringing in bugs or other contaminants. Like it's I don't know. It's not something that most people get to see. So I feel really lucky.
I'm sure. Yeah. Years back when people thought of cannabis and stuff, some of the artwork and pictures that are portrayed it in a negative light. And so I like seeing people that are doing this type of photography because it's beautiful. I've been in some dispensaries that have some really incredible macro photography, cannabis artwork, displayed on like that high gloss or metallic or even like glass artwork and stuff, backlit, and it's just gorgeous. And it makes you look at it in that different light. And I think that's important for educational purposes in this space is to portray it in a different light, and bring out that beauty, because it is a natural plant. It just grows that way. That's what I always tell people. It just grows that way. And to quote a famous comedian, if you should happen to set it on fire, there are some effects, but it's nothing bad. So I think it's important that as being a part of a cannabis enthusiast and someone that is, just even as yourself, just taking pictures of this. I mean, if you were trying to do this job 20 years ago, you would have been looked at in a different light.
It would so it's way more difficult. Yeah.
Way more difficult. And you wouldn't have been able to have a career and stuff out of it as well. It definitely probably would have been just a hobby, So I think that's amazing that people are now able to make careers out of so many different things that are associated with cannabis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've thought about that a lot. Like it's totally, I'm able to do what I do because I was at the right place at the right time. And just kind of putting my weird little hobby out there on the internet early on. And then as cannabis was legalized and became more mainstream, I just kind of was like, well, let's keep riding this wave and see where it takes us. And that's just kind of what I continue to keep doing.
Nice. When did you first start trying to go more mainstream with your cannabis photography?
Probably around 2013, 2014. That's when Dan first reached out and we started collaborating on the first green book. I had already been capturing what I was smoking on. I would go to dispensaries and, try and buy a particular nug, and the bud tender would give me weird looks and be like, you're just going to get whatever we give you, if it happens to be a good nug, then, so be it. And I'd be like, all right, fine, I'll just buy it, see what happens. I spent tons of my own money tracking down various different strains, and then Dan hit me up and was like, let's collab, let's do this book. Track down a bunch more. That book happened, and then we kind of started collaborating on other books, culminating in Higher today. But yeah, it's been almost 10 years that it's been my career now. Pretty crazy.
Awesome. That's awesome. And so, I mean, still, if you've been in it for a decade, then you were still there in the early days of when stuff was kicking off. So that's a good testament to staying true to the faith. What is on your horizons, with what you do? What's some new projects that you're thinking about working on?
Well, the next big thing, I'm going to be going down and shooting a bunch of different phenos for the Humboldt Seed Company Mega Pheno Hunt. Couple of years back, they had their first one. They worked with probably 8 different farms around the Humboldt area, and they grew out, I want to say like 15,000 different plants. It was like an event. They invited a bunch of people from magazines and just people in the industry to go around to all these farms and basically pheno hunt, look around at plants. Everybody got to pick their favorite ones, and then they would Humboldt Seed Company would kind of roll that into their next seed release, where they're doing another one coming up in September. It's going to be even bigger, and I'm just excited. Seeing different phenos is basically peeking into the future of what cannabis is going to be in a couple of years. As soon as these breeders release their seeds, other people start growing it out, and it's just kind of a peek into the future. So being a cannabis nerd, it's super exciting to see that.
Now, tell me about a high point in these last 10 years throughout your career of getting to go to these different farms and document different stuff. What's a high point, an accolade that you?
The first one that popped into my head is probably hanging out with the Jungle Boys. Their legendary grow from LA. I remember early on, I want to say in 2017 or so, they hit me up and wanted to do a shoot, and I was like, is this real life? Like, these guys are legends. This is amazing. So yeah, we got to go there and see the facility, hang out with Ivan and Roach, and they're just great people, great weed. And then that was still in the medical days, so there was different things on the shelf that didn't end up being recreational grows, and I got to try some stuff that was on their shelf that ended up being other clients of mine, but they never ended up making it into the legal market. But they're still some of the best weed I've tried, and it was one of the first big shoots I had and kind of kicked off my career.
California is still some of the most sought after cannabis in the world.
and
So,
rightfully so.
everywhere. I was actually over in Barcelona earlier this year. Beautiful, beautiful city, and they have cannabis clubs over there, private cannabis clubs. And so I was in one, and I found one that I enjoyed. They had some really good genetics, and I was there for a few days, and they were telling me like, "Hey, you need to come back on Friday because we're gonna have some really special stuff." I was like, "Okay, sounds good." So I went there on Friday, and they're like, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we have that special stuff that we were telling you about." I was like, "Well, what is it? What is this special strain that you have?" And they're like, "Very limited supply cookies straight from California." And, they open it up. I'm like, yeah, that looks like because I live out in Las Vegas, and so I mean the West Coast stuff's all right around me, and I'm like, yeah, it's exactly what that is. It looks like what I smoke every day back home. I was like, that's funny, awesome. But it's amazing to see. I love that. I can't wait to see where we're at in another 10 years with all of this, and then 10 years later from that, where it's the stigmatism is completely removed, and the nuance of it is not there, and it's just a normal product that's bought, sold, and traded across many countries. Are all countries going to get on board? No, they're not. But I really feel that the world wants cannabis. It's in my day job, running operations for a hemp cannabis company, always looking at trends and different laws and opportunities in different countries. And, the consensus is the world wants cannabis. The world, not just America, not just Europe, but the world. You're seeing it pop up everywhere. You're seeing it pop up in South America. You're seeing it pop up and legalized in parts of Africa, and massive grows happening out there all over the EU. We're even seeing some trends. Oh, Thailand. Oh, yeah. Thailand's blowing off, and now we're seeing some trends even of people. It's crazy, it's such taboo, but places in the Middle East that are starting to push and want CBD. And as we know, if we see CBD come in, that's the precursor, and then everything else will follow, And so it's
the gateway drug.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they the first time I had hashish was over in Afghanistan.
Wow.
It's been it's from that part of the world. It's been over there, and so I love the strain hunters there. The guy, you already know who they are. The guys over in Amsterdam, and watching their YouTube channel, and oh my goodness, what is life to have to travel the world and just try these different genetics and chase down landrace strains all over. Would be a beautiful thing to do.
Going on a trip with them would be incredible. And, unfortunately, one of them passed away. But
yes, he did.
Before that, back in 2013, we got to go to dinner with them at the Emerald Cup. Yeah, one of the crazier experiences I've had in cannabis. But I remember them saying that the West Coast weed that they were seeing at the Emerald Cup was some of the best they'd ever seen in the world. And I was like, wow, I'm in the right place.
No, Cali is the Mecca. A friend of mine passed just a couple of days ago that I served with, and it's been a kind of a difficult year. That's the third one this year. I look at it, and all these individuals that passed, they didn't have legal access to cannabis. They didn't have access to alternative therapies. They were just getting shoved pharmaceuticals down their throat by the VA, and it's just the healing is not there. And so that's why I ask, what's your mission and stuff, because I love hearing people's, and I see your passion behind it, and I see the good message behind it, that you're just trying to share the beauty. And I believe that you are trying to share the healing power, that's even mentioned in some of your books and stuff. And so that's something very important, that those of us that have the ability and the opportunity to be a voice in this community, whether that's through actual voice and representation or things like you do, through visual representation, we have a very powerful responsibility to spread the light and the awareness on what this plant does.
Definitely. And I'm really sorry to hear about your friends.
Oh, it's it's life, and it just makes you value it even more, right? Like it just makes you really makes you stop, hug those that are close to you, and you just try to be better. That's why I was a little late. Was almost thinking about rescheduling today, but then at the same time, I was like, no, I have an opportunity to do something that this person didn't have. I have the ability to be that voice, to be that change, and so that's what we got to do. That's what we're supposed to do as humans anyway. Wherever we have that ability to make that change and be that impact, that's what our purpose here on this earth is. At least that's what I believe. So
yeah, 100%.
So on your day to day, what is your day to day with the photography? Is it all cannabis? Do you work on like projects with? I mean, I know you're getting contracted out and stuff, but do you work with like certain dispensaries to document their grows and stuff, or their product lines and everything?
Yeah, mainly it's not so much on the dispensary side, unless that dispensary happens to have a grow as well. It's mainly on the grower side. So early on, I was targeting dispensaries because that's, what I was seeing and where I was getting the weed. Dispensaries weren't really interested in photos as much because the strains turn over so often. So it's hard for them to want to invest in photos when that strain might be gone in a week or, a couple weeks. It's the growers that really, like the photos more, have more value in investing in getting the photos because, they've been caring for this plant for, 4 to 6 months. They're seeing it every day. They're, it's something that they want to bring to market and show off. So yeah, it's mainly with the growers and then a lot of breeders as well. And then
you guys are processing a lot of information. You're giving out a lot of information in your book too. It's not just pictures,
Yeah, we in the book there we try and list the lineage as best we could. Obviously, there's a lot of lore and some strains. There's hearsay from different people involved as to where it came from and what the actual cross is. So we did our best and interviewed a lot of the original breeders as best we could. And yeah, we try and list smell and taste notes, like medicinal, what it can help with, and then just like a brief description of, the history of the strain and kind of, what it's all about.
I think that's the important part that I like that you guys did, is you listed as much actual information as you could, didn't try to contort it at all, and you kept the medical benefits in there and help people learn about, because there's some new stuff out there, I heard some rumors on some new tech out there, rumors are rumors, but of trying to be able to test people. And so that way you can, off their endocannabinoid system, identify the specific like terpenes and cannabinoids that would work best with them on a medical level. I love advances like that. I always tell people when they shop, the nose knows. And so if you're able to smell, so it made COVID horrible. Oh my gosh, it made COVID horrible, because I can't even tell you, like I was and I knew the dispensary people, I was very frustrated, and like I returned stuff, and thankfully they were able to work with me and everything, but I was like, I don't like this. Like I'm not able to smell it. So I literally have no idea, because your label honestly doesn't mean anything to me. So like this is really difficult, but the human body reacts so well. And so I love the advancements that we're getting, and I hope that we keep getting there, because yes, it's amazing recreational substance. It is. It's so much safer than the other alternatives that we currently have, like alcohol. It does not have the harmful side effects at all. You don't see the families breaking apart and the harm coming from it. And yes, there still are some, there still have been some intoxicated driving, but you don't hear about the accidents and stuff, Maybe it's just somebody getting pulled over because they were driving too slow or driving too safe.
Exactly.
That's what it is. So I love that we have that for people, but then, man, every day that we get more and more advancements, I get to have people on this show that are talking about new pharmaceutical drugs that they're making out of cannabis or out of specific cannabinoids. I love it, because every one that they make is just every one cannabis pharmaceutical that comes out normally replaces 10 to 20 other pharmaceutical drugs without all the negative side effects. And so I love that we're doing that. And I love the image that you've portrayed, and thank you for the beautiful artwork. Who knows, maybe one day in some of our shops that we have, maybe we can get some of your artwork up there if that's something that you do. It's beautiful. So I would love to have that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Erik. Thank you so much today for coming on and just sharing your passion and what you do. I appreciate it. And congratulations to you, and being able to be in this industry for over a decade, just doing your passion and sharing your love of cannabis. Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been super fun.